back to Persia after they went through Arabia. So that was
No, I think it died like in a battle. It died in a battle and he named the city after it.
I'll have to look it up. I don't remember. Yeah, I have one of the primary sources here by Arian on the life of Alexander. It's been a good 4 years since I read it. Hey, folks, it is November the 5th, 2020, and we're talking about the middle part of chapter 20, which is over the life of Alexander the Great. And from our readings, we have the following terms. We have the Battle of Granicus, Gordium, the Battle of Assus, City of Tyre, Egypt, the Battle of Arbela, Babylon, and Persepolis. And we're about to start on our notes on that in just a moment. And so if you haven't read it yet, make sure you read that chapter. We're almost done with our Greek portion of the course, and we can talk about Rome and then move on to world geography from there. So,
didn't like 8 people try to capture Tyre and never succeeded?
It was fabled as being untouchable. Yeah, like to the ancient world.
He touched it.
Yeah, he touched it, and then he had it. So, yeah, it was extremely thick, tall walls on a very defensible island. They had good port access that they could guard very easily. And, yeah, we will talk about that. So, I thought I started my timer. Maybe I didn't. Phone shut off. Oh, well. We'll go ahead and start now. So here, let me show you the images and go over a little bit of this before we start. So if you recall, Alexander first stopped at Troy. And when he stopped at Troy, he had like a religious offering. He got his troops ready. They held games. And this really got his troops psyched out for the battles ahead. Then he marched on. As he marched on, he's going to make it to the river Granicus in the northwest part of Persia. At this river, it wasn't, Darius was aware of it. The emperor was not there. It was one of his main generals who was leading the army at this time. And they didn't quite take Alexander serious at this moment. As the story goes, the Persians were on one side of this rather large, busy river, and Alexander's forces were at the other. And when Alexander saw that his troops didn't want to cross the river, he went first. Even while they were shooting arrows and getting ready to throw spears at them, he led his horse across the river, and his cavalry followed behind him. Now, he had his cavalry with him because that's kind of what nobility did back then. You're going to find that nobility does this as well throughout the Middle Ages. They're on the backs of horses. Horses are expensive. Horses take more training to fight on. And so his cavalry follows him. And so the phalanx can only follow their king. And then, of course, the hoplite infantry. As they make it across the river, this surprises the Persians, and he's going to be able to crush them. Now, you see here the blue is Alexander's forces. And here we have the orange, which is the Persians. And so when he leads across, he's going to break their center. But he's going to have a very strong front here on the left-hand side. And they're going to be able to crow around and crush them. A little difference here between how the Macedonians fought and how the Persians fought. Your book's correct to point out that this is one thing that you find in armies in this part of the world back then all the way today regarding Persia and the Middle East. The generals and the leaders do not trust their soldiers very much. So all decisions can only come from the leaders. But if you take out their leaders, then the soldiers don't have, they basically lost all their cohesion. And they break apart into chaos and often run away. That's true today in the Middle East now. Like this is one thing that they learned about fighting Iraqis or Afghanis, or They found out in the Iraq versus Persian War, whenever you take out a Middle Eastern general, the other soldiers aren't trusted enough to be taught how to lead, and so they fall apart afterwards. However, the opposite is true for the Macedonians. If you remember, I told you the Spartans made sure that all the soldiers were educated in how to work their way up into leadership, either being an officer or all the way up to one of their generals. Alexander so trusted his generals that he could go fight, and his generals and the leaders under him would make the right decisions. He didn't have to have a top-down approach. Every leader knew what the plan was and how to execute it. Every soldier knew their job. And in the case where, like later on, when Alexander gets injured and knocked out of the battle, his other guys know what to do and they take his place. And if one of his generals or his leaders gets hurt, other people know what to do and how to take his place. This is something that modern Western armies do even today. You ensure that soldiers know how to do the job of the next 2 or 3 people above them, just in case something happens. And battles often have this happen, where you might have like a lowly private to be put in charge of several men or dozens of men because of all the guys in charge wind up getting killed or injured. So it's part of Western tradition we still have today. A lot of it we get from the ancient Greeks.
I remember a story like there was like a ship and like some Atlantic group and it was like one of like our near officer, he just followed through the battle.
Yeah, absolutely, and it goes into naval powers as well. I'm not sure how it worked out for like Air Force stuff or anything, like fighter pilots, but
Probably
they
has a
seem-
similar idea, but
yeah, because they're teams. They usually don't go out alone. But hey, let's go ahead and pause for a second. So if you are having a lunch today and you want a lunch, raise your hand up high where I can count it. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Any B lunches? All right. Well, now, I always forget this. So B is always
But it
a
also gets hot dogs.
hot dog day. All right. So y'all can do the hot dog dance at lunch.
yeah, you did great with it,
E
Jonas.
for A. No problem. All right, folks. So moving on from there. So Alexander's going to totally crush them in this battle, and then he's going to move on from there. And if you remember, a lot of the cities on Western Persia were of Greek origin. So he's going to stop at a Greek temple in the Greek city called Gordium. And there he's going to come across this wagon with a giant unfixable knot on it. This is called the Gordian knot. And so there's apparently supposed to be a prophecy with whoever can undo the knot will take a great empire. And so he does some problem-solving skills and just chops it apart.
So
So
in other words, he
Nothing
just
said that it had to be
so
in
in other
that.
words, he just said, well, I'm gonna try to do this and I don't want to look weak.
And it
so
was
I
undone.
will- So I'll just, cheat.
yeah, he was like, hey, I'm a warrior. This is what I do. Yeah.
Chop people up.
Do not use for commercial use. Do not remove this warning.
I think it was Captain America, but when they're training him for him to become
Oh, yeah.
Captain America, he grabs the flag, he just throws the ball down on the floor and grabs it, and people were trying to claim it.
Yeah. I remember hearing it. I remember hearing something like that, like early special forces initiation. They would have they'd have guys climb into this big dark barn with no lights, and they would say, "Okay, jump," and the guys who would jump would land in hay and be safe, but then they kick them out. And the guys who instead just tried to sneak down or told them no, they would let stay and go through the program because
Trust your
so-
person.
well, they want somebody who can think and not like a robot, right?
Wait, what?
At least that's the story. So it's like, well, if somebody tells you to jump in the dark, do you do it?
Wait, so if you jumped, would you be kicked out?
Yeah, you got kicked out. You got sent back to the regular army.
Is it a good thing?
No.
Not if
Depending.
you're trying to be like something above that. Yeah. So you're like trying to get through an initiation. So you fail the initiation if you just blindly follow orders. But you make it through
If you don't,
if you don't follow orders, if you try to like survive. All right. So after the Battle of Gordium, Darius he's had enough. So he amasses this great, gigantic, diverse army. And like a typical Persian army, it's so big that when it moves, it makes giant dust storms from all the feet and the horses and stuff like that. Well, Alexander is going to defeat him, and he's going to flee headlong. And when he fled, his soldiers no longer had a commander, and so they all fell apart. And the thing is, too, is that one of the reasons the king fled is because you have to remember, ancient kings thought that they were part divine. And so he thought it would have just been essentially not only terrible for him to die, but in a sense, sacrilegious. And so he fled out of there, but he fled so fast, he left his baggage. And baggage is, remember, I told you it's like the wagons, they have the supplies and the helpers and the servants. But in his case, it was also his whole family. So Darius left his whole family, his mother, his wife, his kids, and all that. And as Alexander discovered that, he offered them his protection. Because remember, he's a king. And so though he can be cruel, he has some noble aspects about him. And so they're going to like totally send him fleeing. And this is going to be very bad for Darius because when this happens, a lot of the far stretched out parts of his empire are going to start questioning whether or not they should be part of that empire. There's going to be a lot of celebration. A lot of the states and the cities are going to start turning over to Alexander without a fight because, for one, they fear his army, and two, many of them were just, they didn't care if they were Persian or not. There was nothing like keeping them there. They weren't the same people.
They just paid taxes to someone else.
Pretty much, yeah. It was pretty much an exchange of who am I going to pay my taxes to.
And
Hey,
that way less people died.
Well, yeah. I mean, taxes can be better than death. So then he's going to move down south to the city of Tyre. Tyre was fabled as being a city that was unable to be taken because, as you see, it's on this island with rocky cliffs all around it. Has walls built up very thick and high. And so what he's going to do is he's going to make a bridge little by little to get all the way down there where he can bring up these large towers to have his men scale the walls and also catapults and ballista and things like that. So he's using the best of Greek siegecraft from like Athenian engineers and stuff like that. And so here you see they're just building it, and here they have a little wall built up. They're just kind of dumping stones and earth. And you have this giant city of an army back there, waiting for the battle, bringing in supplies and all that.
they're like,
And-
oh, Jimmy died.
Yeah, put somebody else out there. Well, I mean, I don't know who did that, but
Their blood will serve as immortal.
so during all of this, there was, of course, naval battles. Tyre had one of the best navies in the world. Alexander had to build boats. He had to actually ship in lumber from like hundreds of miles away to bring it in for the siege. So this took months and months, but eventually he took it. And he gained the title because he was able to take cities that were supposed to be impenetrable. They called him the siege breaker. He was somebody who was able to just go in and break cities. So when he takes Tyre, he's going to be especially cruel to it. Because if there's one thing that Alexander does is he's very kind to cities who accept him. But the cities who don't, he totally wipes them out. He basically has all the men slain, and then he sells everybody else to slavery. So we've seen this happen before with the other ancient Greeks. Now, as he moves on to Egypt, they heard about what happened in places like Tyre, and they were like, oh my goodness, last thing we want to do is fight this guy. and they had already been conquered by Persia. And so they didn't want to be part of Persia anymore. They wanted independence, and they believed that Alexander would bring that independence. And so while he's there, he's at the mouth of the Nile River, and he decides to build a city after himself called Alexandria. Alexandria is going to be a very big deal when we talk about Roman history. It's going to be essentially the center of the cultural and the educated world for a very long time. It's in Alexandria that you have things like the Torah and much of what we call the Old Testament is going to be put down into print. Alexandria is going to have a world famous library. If you're taking Latin, your second book, the Blue Book, is going to end up in Alexandria. So he's going to have this built. Now, this isn't the only Alexandria. Oddly enough, he's going to have dozens of Alexandrias built as he moves along. One thing that
Alexander number 1.
you call this Alexandria number 1. He's even going to have an Alexandria built on in Western India, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Persia. Just
United States.
Alexandria, just likes naming cities after himself. So the Egyptians are actually they're going to be so happy to have him there, they're going to make him honorary pharaoh. And while he's there, he's going to have festivities, and he's going to hear that in the desert to the west, there's a temple to an Egyptian god called Ammon, but the Greeks thought it was Zeus. So he's going to have a little pilgrimage there. And while he's there, there's going to be a prophecy that his dad wasn't his dad, and that Olympia was right. His dad's actually Zeus. So he's going to walk around thinking he's essentially Hercules. Here's an Egyptian granite statue of Alexander the Pharaoh. So yeah, he's going to be an honorary pharaoh. And then from there, he's like, you know what? I can't stop here. So he moves back on. And during this time, while he was outside of Persia, Darius is going to get his troops together for one final battle. And this is the Battle of Arbela. It's also called Gargamella, but we're going with Arbela. In this battle, once again, poor Darius is going to be defeated. He's going to jump on horseback and ride away as fast as he can. But we're going to see this is going to be the last escape he makes because his own men are going to assassinate him.
What is that bird thing?
It's a bird.
It's probably portends. Like when we talk about Romans, the Greeks also believe this, more so the Romans, that the flight of birds was very well studied because they thought they could tell the future and the favor of the sky people and stuff like that by watching how birds fly.
Horses.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. Yeah, lots of ponies die. In this battle, the Greeks are going to face against elephants brought from, because the Persian Empire went all the way up to India. So they had access to Indian elephants, which were very terrifying to these people.
Because they're just massive.
And they never seen anything like that. They never even heard of a creature like this. So their noises, how big they were, the smell of elephants to horses that never smelled them spooked the horses and made them go crazy. This is where they're going to have to figure out what to do against them.
I think he ends up just saying stab their feet.
Yeah, they're going to find that their feet are very easy to get. And another thing they find out too is that when you raise an elephant for war, the elephant tamer lives with that elephant, and elephants are very emotionally attached. They if you have a pack of elephants, if one of them dies, they actually mourn for the elephant. If they take out with arrows the person who's in command of the elephant goes crazy because that's their family member. And then they start stepping on their own troops. So the elephant kind of just goes bonkers.
Which then ends up being a bit
Yeah, it's a liability.
anti-productive.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you get them while they're only around their own troops. So here you see Alexander's going to take his phalanx and he's going to focus essentially on one side. He's going to break through it. Darius made the mistake of allowing the Macedonians to have enough room to use all of their army but he had to stack his troops, and they just it was too difficult for them to surround the Macedonians. Here you see a flank. Like one thing Alexander does is he has his cavalry come up and then flee and drag them away. So he's using them as a distraction. And while this side's chasing them, they can focus on this side, totally crush them and come around. It's pretty smart, pretty smart. And then he's going to make it to Babylon, and they're so tired of losing. Yeah, they're so tired of losing, and they're afraid of being destroyed. They give the city to Alexander, and so then he's essentially living as the king of Persia. Remember, we'll talk more about what he does when he has Persia later. Your book, unfortunately, skips a lot of his adventures in India and in Arabia. So I think we're going to have to talk about that like more in detail instead of reading about it tomorrow.
By
Hey.
adventures, do you mean him going around and killing people and conquering cities?
He does it. He does it.
Is
Hey.
that all he does, or does he like ever have any other stories?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, but they're kind of sad. They're like stories about him, like he was a chronic alcoholic, and one of his bouts, he actually stabbed one of his best friends to death. You know, I mean, it's so yeah, he had a troubled private life. You know, and back at home, his mother was having palace intrigue, and so she was like poisoning rivals and stuff like that while he was away, and so
Was it include?
rivals like other nobles who wanted to be king of Macedonia, huh? As people do. Yeah, I mean just normal Thanksgiving stuff, right? So thank goodness it only happens once a year. All right, so Granicus. What happened to Granicus again? Anybody remember? I know it's been a while.
It's that river view.
Yeah, so
River thinking, yeah. We ended up just
Alexander.
saying, screw it, I'm doing it anyway.
now this is his first defeat of the Persians. So he defeats the Persians at the Granicus River. So yeah, here he displayed his own personal bravery, but also his leadership style. He always fights with his troops. He does not give orders. He makes the plan, and he tells his generals and his commanders what to do, and then he's out there fighting. He does give some, I guess you call them audibles, some on-the-spot commands during the battle. But that's the secret to his success. He trusts the guys under them, and they trust him, and they all work together. So it's a real powerful sense of teamwork. Which goes to show just how important trust is. All right, Gordium. So what happened at Gordium?
Thingy McBobber.
He blew up.
He blew up. So he hit the panic button, and he just kind of.
He took the nuclear football and went beep, boop, beep, boop.
Okay, it's a nice game of hot potato. All right, so what about Gordium though?
He cut a knot with his sword.
Got a knot,
Oh, right, that
yeah.
was that thing.
So it just shows a bit of his mindset, right? So at Gordium, Alexander
Cut the knot.
cut the knot,
Slices and all that.
prophesied to get an empire. So I guess that's the short of it. Now, if you want more detailed notes, remember, I have much more detailed notes in my Quizlet. So you can always go there if you want, like, need more definitions, like especially before, like our test on Thursday. So
What?
next Thursday.
Oh,
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Hey, we're going to review on Wednesday, so we're not going to have a lecture next week. And on Monday, I'm going to let you know what our test is over, but the test is on next Thursday. But I'll give you more information next week, just a heads up. All right, so Isis. Isis was another.
city.
Unconquerable city.
No, Isis
So
not
that's
here.
Oh.
tired. That's
At
that was
Esus,
the-
he first actually met who?
Darius.
Oh, wait.
Darius, yeah.
Boom. I guess.
So Al fought Darius III
His name is Al.
in battle.
No, it's Darius.
What happened in
Oh,
that
you're
battle?
saying Darius, not the other thing.
So what happened in battle?
He died.
Who?
No,
What?
Darius.
Yeah, Darius ran and left what?
His family.
Yeah, Darius fled and left his family.
Left is really close to being like the same letters as fled.
Yeah, it is.
But it's just the team
Little rearrangement, change that one, yeah.
fled.
So yeah, he's gonna flee it, and if you remember, Darius was like, "Hey, I'll pay a ransom to get my family back, and I'll let you have half of my kingdom." Is what he told him.
What if I have your
I mean, like,
and kill
he's
you?
gonna take.
Yeah, Alexander was like, "Forget that. I do what I want to." He's like, "I speak to equals, and the King of Kings is not my equal." So he kind of knew that. Oops, it was on after that. So Tyr, that was the
Tyrone.
no.
It was the one where they just literally just built a bridge.
Yes, yes.
We need.
Well fortified city. The thing is, he's actually going to. We don't have time to talk about it.
Built a dirt bridge, conquered the city.
Yeah, he's going to conquer a lot of cities. He's going to conquer cities that are like essentially on mountaintops. He's going to conquer cities that are surrounded by rivers. He's going to do a lot of this also in India. And so this is just a good example for us. Well fortified city.
What is up with people trying to take over every kingdom?
I guess they didn't have Netflix. What else are you gonna do?
Are we
Alright.
gonna get to the 96 roads?
Because like Rome,
Like next year. Yeah, it's more of a next year thing because
Like next semester?
no, like next school year. Yeah, then it's more like a
Wait, what did he ask about?
Knights of Rhodes. So like when we talk about things like the Crusaders and Crusader kingdoms and like the Templars and the Hospitallars and stuff like that, we could get to that.
I thought he said roads.
So well fortified city. I'll build a bridge and siegecraft.
And cut off his right hand.
But now
What?
destroy the city. And here he's going to show his cruelty too. Like, he's going like your book said, he's going to take the defenders and have them like murdered in front of everybody. And then
Like
the guy who was in charge of it, their king, he's gonna while he's alive, he's basically going to do like Achilles does to Hector's body, right? He drags him around with a chariot. But in this case, the poor guy's still alive for a little bit. And so that's pretty bad.
I don't think he lives that long.
I don't know. I'm sure it was rough.
All
All right. So Egypt. He goes down to Egypt and
they pretty much say,
Become
here you go.
Pharaoh.
yeah. So
Pharaoh for a bit.
Egyptians welcomed Alexander.
you can only become Pharaoh through bloodline, right?
Yeah, and because they didn't want to taint the bloodline, they pretty much only intermarried, so they got very inbred.
Isn't that like every monarchy though?
Yeah, but with
Oh, I do like that.
Egyptians, it wasn't cousins; it was brothers and sisters. So
I don't think that have to be.
it was pretty gross. So Egyptians welcomed Al and made him pharaoh. What did he decide to do there?
Leave it, kind of.
Something about
Build a new
Wait, no,
city.
he
You
built a
wanted to
city.
build a new city.
Yeah, he had Alexandria planned. Now, it's not gonna be until the next pharaoh, Ptolemy, is actually gonna build it. And we'll talk about,
Why would someone build a place and after another person?
because,
Alexandria sounds like a theme park.
we'll talk
Named
about-
after yourself. Like an welcome to Alexandria. It's just a theme
it's
park.
because, well, Ptolemy was a good friend of Alexander for one, but two, Alexander is gonna be a myth by then. And by building that, he's gonna show how he's part of that
You mean
myth.
a legend? Like
No,
Legend,
the
yeah.
man, the myth,
Yeah, I
the
guess so.
legend.
But he will have a lot of myth about him though. That's the thing. So yeah, it's gonna be like, look, I'm part of this thing that's so big, you know, it's like,
It's
remember
propaganda.
Alexander is like bigger than life? Well, I'm gonna finish his plans. So that makes me legitimate. Yes.
It's
On
propaganda.
Titan, is that supposed to be all built bridge?
Yeah, whatever you want.
It says
Alright.
all built bridge.
Build the bridge.
Alexander's
Yeah,
forever.
whatever you want. Yeah, whatever you want. All right, so moving on. Arbella. This is the final.
Arabia.
Oh, right, the thing where he fights Darius and Darius
Yeah.
gets killed by his own guys.
Yeah.
Wait, what was this place?
Final Arbella,
I see
or
more bronze
you
people
could,
in
or it's also known as Gargamella. So final battle. Sounds like somebody who eats murder. Final battle, where
Gargamel?
yeah,
Gargamel, I mean.
final battle where Alexander
Gargamel killed.
defeated Darius, who fled.
Is Gargamel ever successful in anything?
Say what?
Like from the Smurfs? I've never
Well,
I've never seen him do like something.
well, didn't he have a
He
cat?
flees
I
and
guess
he's
he
killed
took
by
care
his
of a
own
cat,
men.
you know.
Is he killed by his own men in this one or the next one?
When we come back tomorrow, we'll talk about one of his main satraps or officials named Bessus is going to kill him and try to become the new Persian emperor.
No, I'm talking about,
Very
um,
good.
he's immediately going. Yeah, isn't Darius killed in this one?
He's killed afterwards. Now he runs away, and while he's on the run, he'll be assassinated. And
By
this
his
is
own guys, right?
and this is going to make Alexander super mad, and we'll talk about that when we come back.
Why?
You didn't give him an honorable battle or something like that.
Well, he stole his glory from one, but two, the idea for monarchs, the idea that a normal person could kill a king was just like, oh, how could you? And it was like insulting, right? It was seen as like a sin, like patricide or something.
Murder should just be a sin in general.
Well, yeah, but that's one of those things that's going to stick around all the way even to Christian
Yeah.
kingdoms. All right, Babylon and Persepolis. What happens here? These are the two, like you could say, the dual capitals of Persia. So Darius is defeated, and Alexander, how? With a salt shaker.
Yeah, with a machine gun salt shaker.
Salt guns.
Enemies were
Salt
always-
guns are a real thing.
Salt gun, yeah.
Yeah, where
So
you
he's
shoot
gonna
salt.
he's gonna shoot all their flies out of the air.
Yeah.
But,
Snails
He's
too.
gonna take his salt gun and he's gonna shoot people in the eyes.
Now he comes in
Now you gotta use that pepper.
to find
Do the sign.
that the Persian capital
It isn't really.
You see something.
welcomed him. And by him, I mean out. So yeah, they're going to throw their gates open. It's going to be full of magnificent wealth from essentially what they consider all around the world. And we're going to, when we come back, this is where we're going to start off next time.
You spell capital like with
Think
like
there's
a capital
consonants on
in
the
the
Egyptian
other
script.
ones.
Well, what's wrong with that?
More
Like it's
interesting
capital.
than Alexander.
Was this supposed to be A?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fine.
He killed a lot more people
I thought
too.
it was fine.
No, capital CAPITAL.
Yeah, and
Okay.
capital is like
Designer.
the Hunger Games.
Well, it all comes from Latin word for head. So what?
Are we ever gonna study Genghis
Next year. That's next year's topic. Because he ties into the end of the Middle Ages and the start of the Renaissance.
He killed a lot of people. Like, and I kill everyone else.
So what?
Slaughtered the
killed,
Chinese, destroyed Babylon.
Before he destroyed Babylon?
Yes, how long did it take
Because
for,
most people
like,
anyone
all the
in
kings
history
to
of
try to destroy Babylon?
followed by Mao Zedong.
Like Genghis? I'm not sure. I think it was pretty quick. By the time he made it there,
I'm not just taking it, I mean like didn't kings come back over and over and just take down a bunch of walls and leave?
yeah, because by the time Genghis would be there, you would have Persia would be over, then you would have it ruled by Macedonians, then you would have the new Persian Empire for a long time, the Parthians, and you have the Muslims, then the Khans, then the Ottomans. So yeah, it's been knocked down and rebuilt for a while.
Guys trading more hands.
But even before this, you had the Assyrians, all kinds of people. It's an ancient city. I mean, people come and go. Hey, folks, that's going to end our lecture for today. We'll come back and talk more about Alexander tomorrow, and I'll see you later.